And would you like to have a successful business, just like Jeff Bezos? This is Now Tell Us. I'm your host, Anthony Morore. At Now Tell Us, we have guests come and tell us stories. They come and inspire us. They come and educate us on a subject. And always, we're having a great time with our guests. And when I say always, today we have a great guest with us. His name is Steve Anderson. And he's going to tell us what a small business can learn from Jeff Bezos. I remind you to please share this episode with all your friends. If you have a question during the program, you can always ask. If you have a comment, just give us a comment. We appreciate feedback and we'll thank you for that. So, without taking one more minute, I'm just going to ask you to join me as we go together to meet our guest today, Steve. Here we go. Hello, Steve.
Anthony, hello. How are you
I'm
today?
fine. How about you?
I'm doing great. Thank you.
Good to see you here, and thank you for coming to our episode.
My pleasure.
Yeah. Where are you?
In outside Nashville, Tennessee, in the U.S.
That's wonderful. And I'm always curious to know how's the weather where I am not. So,
Well, we
how
we
is it
are
there?
rapidly changing from spring into early summer. So weather's great today, and that's part of why I live here. We like the way the weather here has four seasons, but none are severe. So
Well, that's beautiful. I'm in just about the same kind of climate, I guess, because we are going into summer just slowly. We'll get there sometime. And people are going to be busy as always, doing some activities and going on with their businesses. So, what will you be doing in summer? What's your favorite thing to do during summer?
travel. Certainly, we'll be doing some travel. We may end up at a beach, southern Florida beach or something like that. And I have seven grandchildren, so that's always keeps us busy.
Wow,
So
seven
yeah,
grandchildren. That's you're a blessed man.
yes, I am.
Seven. Yeah, so you've been there, done that, seen a lot of things along the way, and it's always good to have someone like you in our program to give us some insights in several things, and especially now we are talking business, and we have you here. Can you tell us about your business life? Because I
Sure.
know you've got quite an experience in that area.
Well, I've been around a while, so that
Yeah.
by its nature means I have experience. But my career has been in the insurance industry.
Hmm.
Early on, selling insurance actually to businesses, so understanding what they do, how they do it, protecting them against loss. And then the last 25 years, I've spent actually helping other insurance agents with technology.
Hmm.
So you think about 25 years ago, late 90s, the internet just was starting, right? All the websites and now social platforms, all that kind of stuff. I had a real interest in that and helping insurance agents understand how it could be used as a tool to help them sell and to help them service their customers better. So, yeah, that's a very short, right, synopsis of a lot of different things that I've done over the years.
Yeah, and what a time to have lived. Just that time when the internet was taking, uh, I mean, it was taking over the world, but it has never stopped taking over the world. It's moving at a very terrific speed always. Things
Yes.
are happening. Yeah. So it must have been a very wonderful time during that time.
Well, I would say it's a wonderful time, and it's not unlike even the current time, meaning, all the generative AI that it's all of a sudden and everybody's trying to figure out, is this anything? Is this terrible? Is it good? How do we use it? And kind of any, between the internet itself, between the mobile devices now that we have, between machine learning and all that kind of stuff. I mean, every technology kind of has its life cycle that it goes through.
Mm-hmm.
And frankly, that idea is what led me to, write a book about how technology is developing rapidly, continues to develop rapidly,
Mm-hmm.
and that businesses take a risk by not keeping up with it and figuring out what they should do and what they shouldn't do. And that can be very difficult. So that gives me something to do.
Yeah, and is that the book that we are going to talk about today, or is another
Yes.
book
No,
altogether?
that is the book today. Yep.
Yes, I came across it, and it's known as the Bezos Letters: 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon. It's an interesting title.
Yeah.
So we are curious to know what's in it. What's in it?
So
Maybe
you know, a
give us
little background of the book.
yeah. Please.
I really did start asking the question, is the biggest risk agencies, because that's what I was working with,
Mm-hmm.
expanded now to businesses, is the biggest risk they face actually not taking enough risk?
Mm-hmm.
And really counterintuitive, being from the insurance industry, because everything we do is about mitigating risk, reducing risk, transferring risk, helping people when bad accidents happen. But in business, if you're trying to grow, and again, technology is a big piece of that, if you don't stay ahead or at least be willing to look at and experiment, then you're not going to grow and your business is going to be in jeopardy. And so
Mm-hmm.
I started researching different companies, ones that were once very successful and are literally no longer here, they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
Other companies that have been successful and continue to be successful. And I came across Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And more importantly, I came across the letters to shareholders that Jeff Bezos wrote starting in 1997. Now,
Mm-hmm.
a little background for an international audience. Here in the US, when a company goes public, they sell shares.
Mm-hmm.
They are regulated by the Security and Exchange Commission,
Yeah.
and they are required to submit financial information every year.
Mm-hmm.
Well, part of that generally is a letter directed to the shareholders written by the CEO. And that's what these letters are. And Bezos wrote one every year starting in 1997,
Mm-hmm.
actually up until 2020, when he stepped down as CEO and moved into the executive chairman position at
Mm-hmm.
Amazon.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
So
that's interesting.
those letters typically are very boring, right? They talk about how great the company is. What intrigued me with Bezos is that he did some of that, but a lot of what he wrote about and talked about was how Amazon was growing and his mindset about growing Amazon from literally the very beginning. So 1997, obviously very early in the internet, very early for Amazon. And I realized there were threads through the letters over the
Mm-hmm.
years.
Mm-hmm.
And literally, Bezos is teaching in a kind of hidden in plain sight way how other businesses could use some of the principles that he used to grow Amazon.
Hmm. I would
So
be
even your title, I mean,
yeah.
what can a small business learn from Amazon? And I know some listening to this probably are going, Amazon's huge.
Yeah.
What can I learn from them? I'm not huge, and maybe I don't want to be huge,
Uh-huh.
but what can I learn? Well, I always like to remind people that Jeff Bezos started literally like every other entrepreneur starting a new business. He started in a garage at his house, putting books in packages and
Mm-hmm.
driving them to the post office to mail them.
Yeah.
So yes, he got big, and yes, he started just like every other business starts. So I was really curious to try and learn how he did that and how he made that transition. And I believe the principles I identified can apply to almost literally any organization.
Yeah, we are curious to hear that because almost everybody, if they're not in business, they are kind of thinking of that day that they are going to get in business, and they wish to succeed. If not to the level of Jeff Bezos, everybody is going into business thinking or dreaming of us of some success.
Yeah,
So
no,
it's always
they
good to,
wouldn't do it. It's too hard, right? You've got to have a dream
yeah.
to support those hard times that
Uh-huh.
every business has as they're growing.
Okay. How many of the secrets are you willing to share with us, or rather,
Well, I don't think we have time for
it
all of
wasn't a
them,
secret.
but
It wasn't a secret because,
14's a lot, no
yeah.
question. And
Hmm.
what I did is in the book, I broke them into what I call cycles. So
Okay.
test, build, accelerate, and scale. And those are
Hmm.
the 4 cycles that I believe every business, large or small, continues to go through.
Yeah.
Test is you got an idea, you're trying to figure out a new product, a new service, a new platform. Is it going to work?
Hmm.
Build is you've got some early success. Now, how do I build it going forward?
Hmm.
Accelerate is now have some momentum. How do I accelerate that momentum? And
Mm.
then scale is how do I maintain the culture of the company, the vision that you have as an owner, now that employees have that you've given them. How do I maintain that and not become so bureaucratic and over bloated that I actually start down and get worse?
Hmm.
So those are the kind of the cycles that I think are helpful to think about.
Yeah.
So let me pick a couple of them in each one of those, if that's
Let
okay.
me start by picking one, something that is very,
Unless you've got something that intrigues you. I mean, that,
yes, the very, very first chapter. When you talk of encouraging successful failure, what does that
yes,
mean?
it's really counterintuitive, isn't it?
Yeah.
But here's what Bezos says. Um, in order to invent, you have to experiment.
Hmm.
And if you're going to experiment, by its very nature, an experiment means you're going to fail because you don't know what's going to work.
Hmm.
So when I talk about encouraging successful failure, it's understanding that we are going to fail, maybe at a lot of things. And if we build that into our culture in the company from the very early stages, employees will be more willing to experiment with crazy ideas. And here's the
Hmm.
key. Sometimes those crazy ideas actually work, right? So for example, at
Hmm.
Amazon, who knew you could sell books over the internet? Well, nobody. And they made a lot
Nobody
of
at that time.
mistakes in those early days trying to figure it out, but they kept testing, experimenting, failing, learning from their failure. And that's the successful part of a failure. And
Hmm.
again, I believe that employees actually aren't afraid of failure, but they are afraid of the consequences of failure. So if you haven't
Yeah.
built a culture that supports that and encourages that, then employees learn I better not do anything that I don't know for fact is going to work. And that
Hmm.
limits what you can invent on behalf of your customer. And again, that
Mm.
phrase is a Bezos phrase. He said at Amazon, we invent on behalf of our customers. And
Hmm.
we give them things they never knew they needed um, because they didn't know it was possible. But we were able to do that. So yes,
Mm.
it's very counterintuitive and is again, I think, a key principle at Amazon that allows them to continue to build new things. And I will say here that the focus today in business on we've got to innovate, I think is backwards.
Mm.
Because innovate means I'm making something I already have better.
Yeah.
Invention means I'm creating something new that our customers never knew they wanted, but absolutely love. And so
Mm-hmm.
experimentation allows you to invent, which then gives you the opportunity to innovate. So
Mm.
the Kindle ebook reader, Amazon wasn't the first one to come out with one, but they were the first one to come out with a reader that didn't have to be connected to a computer to download a
Mm-hmm.
book. And you could,
Mm.
their goal with the Kindle was to be able to download any book in the world in 60 seconds or less.
Mm-hmm.
And so they did that. And again, they keep iterating the Kindle. So that is innovating it. But that first of invention created a whole new category of product for Amazon and
Mm-hmm.
for lots of people.
Yeah. Wow, that's great. Now continue with picking your favorites. That was my, I
Okay,
mean,
so let
that,
me go into
that-
build.
okay.
So three different principles there. The first one is obsess over customers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is always interesting to talk about because any business is concerned with their customers. But we talk about it in terms of customer service, customer experience, the customer journey. Bezos used the word obsess. We will
Mm-hmm.
obsess over customers. And to me, that's a really interesting word because it takes it to a different level and almost
Yeah,
can be
sure.
negative, right? Like, oh, you're too
Mm-hmm.
obsessive. You're too focused on the customer. I don't think any
Yeah.
business owner would say that, but I'm not sure how they treat customers is obsessive enough. Well, at Amazon, it absolutely is. And it means that the customer always comes first.
Mm-hmm.
And so, another principle to think about how can you, and the way I like to phrase it is, how can you continue to remove friction when a customer works with you, buys from you, transacts with you? And in my presentations, I ask the audience, why do you go to Amazon to buy stuff? And typically the
Mm-hmm.
response is because it's easy,
Yeah.
right? Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, three customer pillars at Amazon support this: wide selection, low prices, and fast delivery. Well, fast
Mm-hmm.
delivery was a crazy idea in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
The
Yeah.
senior leadership team told Bezos, "You're crazy. We can't give free shipping. It'll cost us too much." But here's where the customer obsession comes in. What he said was, if customers can get what they want faster, they will come back and buy more. And in
Uh-huh.
the long run, we will benefit if we focus on the customer, and our shareholders will
Mm-hmm.
benefit when we focus on the customers.
Mm-hmm.
So, again, lots more in that. That's why I wrote a book. But, these kind of concepts or ideas, I think, really can help businesses start thinking differently about what they do and how they do it. All right. So,
Sure. Sure.
accelerate. So,
Okay.
test, build, now accelerate. And a
Accelerate.
couple, two here I'll mention. The first one is generate high velocity decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, remember, we're accelerate cycle scale. We're growing is really the idea behind this. And
Mm-hmm.
the tendency of businesses when they're growing is to get more bureaucratic because
Yeah.
now you can't, the owner, CEO, whatever that position is, can't interact with every employee because you're growing. You have more employees than you did before. And the
Mm-hmm.
tendency is to put bureaucracy in place. So, what Bezos said is there are really only two kinds of decisions in a company. And he very uncharacteristically was not very creative. He called them type one and type two. Type one
Mm-hmm.
decisions are big, bet the farm, huge decisions. And what he says is those decisions need to be made slowly, intentionally, with as much data and information as you can gather. But he
Mm-hmm.
also said very few decisions in a business are type 1. Most decisions are type 2. Type 2 decisions are, we decide fast. We decide from the lowest group or person that's capable of making the decision. We give them the authority to make that decision, because we know with type 2 decisions, they're not bet the farm. We can change our mind or get more information and say, that was not the right direction to go. Let's change it without
Yeah.
big consequences. And that type of decision making helps growth improve. Bureaucratic decision making slows growth down.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really important one. And even at Amazon, they named their teams 2-pizza teams, which
Mm-hmm.
the rule was a team could be no bigger than what 2 large pizzas could feed. So 10, 12, maybe maximum
Yeah.
people in a team. Now that may mean they have lots of teams, but they were able to get decisions made faster, and actually kind of back to that encourage successful failure idea. And this is an example of where these principles work with each other. They don't just stand on their own. But
Mm-hmm.
we make a mistake, we identify the mistake, we learn from it, we pivot, and we keep going. The other one I want to highlight here is make complexity simple. And this kind of alludes
Yeah.
back to my comment about removing friction in the customer interaction. And that principle, actually, I still remember the day that I had that idea. I was listening to a radio program interviewing one of the CEOs of a large national drugstore chain. And Amazon had just purchased a small company actually, called PillPack. So they delivered prescription drugs to individuals through the mail. And that
Okay.
CEO said, I'm not worried about Amazon coming into the pharmacy space, because pharmacy is more complicated than they realize. And I literally remember saying out loud, but that's what Amazon does. They make complex things simple. And so
Mm-hmm.
again, another principle, how are you making the complex customer journey or the interaction or your product or your platform or your service, how are you making it more simple to use? All right.
Make it simple.
Make it simple. Make
Make,
complexity
yeah, make complexity
simple.
simple.
Right. And again,
Yeah.
you could point to all kinds of different things at Amazon
Yeah.
that reflects that particular principle.
Yeah. And in that cycle, I would like you to mention about promoting ownership. How do you? Because you mentioned that on Accelerate,
Say that again. Mention what?
promoting ownership.
Oh, yes. So
Uh-huh.
the idea here is, and it really goes back to the 1997 letter. And just a tidbit here. What's interesting is Jeff Bezos wrote that letter, again, 1997, obviously, was a core foundational piece for how Amazon would move forward. He included a copy of that letter in every single subsequent letter he wrote. And he would say something like, as is my habit, I include our original 1997 letter. So in that original letter, he talked about a couple different things, one of which was employees and the importance of employees and high quality employees.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of promote ownership is that, and again, what he said was, our employees need to think like owners. And in order to do that, they need to actually be owners. So compensation, really up until just fairly recently, they've been adjusting a little bit now, but compensation was weighted toward options and shares of Amazon, not cash. And again,
Okay.
lots of early employees, multimillionaires because of that. But that's the idea of every employee needs to think like an owner. And if they think like an owner, they actually need to be an owner to have them have skin in the game, I think is the way I would phrase
Mm.
it. So yes,
Yeah,
good one.
but how do I apply that in my very small business?
It could be, again, again, a small business owner, you have ownership, right? So are you willing to give up maybe a small piece? I'm not saying all of it, right? Or a big part of
Mhm.
it. You still maintain control, but are you willing to give it up as incentives to your employees? Maybe early on, and maybe it's probably not, it's not stock options because you might not be public and selling stock shares, but
Yeah.
what is it that you could do to let your employees know that they are an important part of making this business go? And if they help make that business successful, they will be
Hmm.
rewarded for their effort. So there absolutely are ways that can be done, and part of the, I think, difficulty is the mindset of an owner. I started this,
Hmm.
I put all this in here, it's my business. No one else is going to tell me how to do things,
Yeah, that happens.
right? Yeah,
That happens.
and that's okay. I'm not
Yeah.
saying that's, and I'm not sure you grow as a business with that kind of mindset.
Mm.
And I'll point. So my very first job in insurance was my father-in-law. I worked
Hmm.
for him in his insurance agency. And he had that mindset. I'm the boss. I make the decisions. I don't care what you think. I left after 13 years.
Hmm.
And so that type of thinking, I don't believe, and certainly those listening can disagree, I don't believe actually encourages employee to be part of a team to help you be successful with the idea and the concept that you put together. And it
Mm.
really does help doing that. So I think that's how it's a mindset more than anything for a business owner.
Okay. So yeah, you can now go to
Okay, so
scaling.
number
Yeah.
4, scale.
Hmm.
And I always like talking about this one. So the very last principle, 14, is called believe it's always day one. And this is a core mindset belief concept from Bezos. He ended every single shareholder letter with some version of it's still day one. It continues to be day one. Even in 2019 with the pandemic and everything that Amazon and everybody else was going through, he said, even with the struggles that we've had, it's still day one. So again, pointing back to that first letter, he said it's day one for the internet and for Amazon.com if we execute well. So this idea of day one. So let me give you a little story,
Yeah.
kind of drive this home. Bezos was on stage in front of a couple thousand employees at an all hands meeting, something they did regularly. He had gone
Hmm.
through where the company is, things, initiatives he's excited about, and he always left time for employees to ask questions. And they did that by submitting the question on a note card. So he had some note cards in his hand. And he looked down at the next question and he said, and he kind of chuckled and he said, I think I know the answer to this. And the question was, Jeff, what does day two look like? Right? You're always
Hmm.
talking about day one. What does day two look like? And
Yeah.
he said, day two is stasis, followed by irrelevance, followed by excruciating, painful decline, followed by death. And that's why
Mm.
it's always day one. Now, if you look at some of those companies I mentioned in the very beginning that once were very successful and are no longer here, you can kind of
Hmm.
map that process. Now, it may take 20 years or longer, but once you start down that day two mindset, it's really, really hard to switch it. And
Mm.
then he said, and this was in the letter that came out after that incident. He talked about the incident and he said, but I'm more interested in how you fend off day two What are the
Mm-hmm.
defenses? And he identified 4 different things. He identified customer obsession, we've talked about. He
Mm-hmm.
identified a skeptical view of proxies. Now, in his terminology, a proxy is a process or procedure that doesn't actually serve the customer anymore or needs to be looked at. So you you always question what you're doing and why you're doing it. Number
Okay.
3 is an eager adoption of external trends. And
Mm.
it says those trends typically are easy to spot because people talk about them. I again mentioned AI and all the stuff going on right now with that.
Yeah.
That would be a trend and an eager adoption. So, like he identified in 2016 machine learning as a trend that Amazon was doing a lot of work in. Well, those were
Mm-hmm.
early days of what we're seeing now. And then the fourth was, which we talked about, high velocity decision making. He said those
Okay.
were at least 4 defenses against a day 2 mindset.
Hmm. Wow, 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 wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for sharing this. Now, for those who are listening or watching, that's the book that Steve is talking to us about is the Bezos letters. That's 14 principles to grow your business like Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in 4 sections. Actually has got 16 chapters. So what you've heard is not everything. So you better go and get the book and read for yourself. And we are almost now coming to the end of this show. Now, we'd like you to tell us how is it that you maybe do you still work with people, don't you?
Yes.
Like if there's someone who's listening and would like some help in growing a business, and maybe also come to your website or something like that to
Yep.
get your book. Tell us about that.
All right. So, a couple places. So, the book is available at Amazon, I would say.
Hmm.
It's also available in 19 different languages. So, it's had some worldwide success. The book website is thebezosletters.com. And
Okay.
then my primary social platform is LinkedIn. So, you should be able to search for Steve Anderson Insurance or Steve Anderson Bezos and I find me. Let me know you listen to this show, and I'd be glad to connect with you there.
Wonderful. The jeffbezos.com. I want to share that so that someone can see
Yeah,
how
thebezosletters.com.
the bezosletters.com. 1 minute. There. The bezosletters.com.
There's a T.
Oh, I missed a T. I missed a T.
Almost.
Almost. I almost. Okay. There we are. So the bezosletters.com. Everyone go to the bezosletters.com and get to connect with Steve, get the book, and grow your business. Before we go, we'd like you to leave us with a few words that we should always remember. On top of everything good that you have shared with us, what are the few words that we should always remember?
um, um, well, I'm thinking of a couple different things in a couple different categories. Certainly some book stuff, and I would say if there's one concept to take away from the book, it's believe it's always day one, and that kind of is
Mm-hmm.
the overarching piece. I think the other thing for me personally is I've been a lifelong learner, which is
Okay.
I think one of the key things. I have a curiosity. I like learning new things, and I like helping others maybe see things that they didn't. And so that's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
book and the technology piece and a number of things that I've done. So believe it's always day one and um, be a lifelong nerder. You were never
Mm.
too old to learn something new.
Wow. Yeah, take that from a grandpa of 70.
Exactly my point.
Steve Anderson. He's still learning. He's still teaching and learning.
Yep.
And we appreciate you and taking your time to come to be with us here. That's a great honor.
Anthony,
We are,
thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. It was a great conversation.
yeah, thank you. And to everyone who's listening or watching, thank you also for taking your time. And even if you get to listen to this or watch it after we are through, we also appreciate you taking your time. Please share it with your friends, subscribe to our channels, go to thebezosletters.com and connect with Steve. Don't forget that. And this has been Now Tell Us. I've been your host, Anthony Morore. And together with our guest, Steve Anderson, we are saying bye for now. Bye.